Welcome to Inventive Minds Child, Youth, and Family Support Center. We are a not-for-profit organization working with families in their day-to-day parenting by providing workshops and seminars related to pediatric and child development. Inventive Minds provides care in the early years sectors for newborn to age 6, licensed under the Ministry of Education all across Ontario. Inventive Minds carries an elementary school open to international students from junior kindergarten to grade 3. The Inventive Minds Family Center helps families in mediation, arbitration, and parent coordination cases related to family separation and divorce. We support families during and past separation and divorce. Inventive Minds works with court orders to conduct child voice report and parenting courses related to CAS, court, and mediation purposes. To learn more about our services, reach us at inventivekidz.com. My name is Rose, the founder of Inventive Minds Family Center. We are very excited to be sitting down today with Dr. Hasan Merali. Today we are going to be discussing Dr. Hasan's work with the pediatric in the emergency and children and the new book he has published. We're looking forward of learning so much. Please, Dr. Hasan, if you can kindly tell us a little bit about yourself, what inspired you to do the book, we would really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It's so nice to be here talking to this group. I am an associate professor of pediatrics at McMaster University. Clinically, I practice pediatric emergency medicine in the ER at McMaster Children's Hospital. I'm also a proud dad of a 4-year-old little girl. Her and all of my experiences with these wonderful little people inspired me to write this book, and it's called Sleep Well, Take Risks, Squish the Peas: Secrets from the Science of Toddlers for a Happier, More Successful Way of Life. I also have a TED Talk that just came out, so I'll post that in the chat as well. You know, one of the things that happens as parents and as people who are around young children, we get all of this advice about we should be doing this, we should be doing that. It can sometimes be a little overwhelming. And I think there's a lot of great information out there. What I wanted to do is something really unique. Because in my experience with these little people is that they do all of these wonderful things in life and they approach life in such a nice way with kindness and joy and laughter that when I really dug into the research on why they are the way they are and looked at how adults could be if they acted more like that, I wanted to flip the script and talk about what we can learn from them. Because I think if we can tap into that more, we can actually make our lives better. And those of you who are going to get the book, I think you'll see that.
You talked about your little 4-year-old, and I know children are so wonderful. Their world is really different when it comes to our world. How did your personal experience as a father of a toddler and as a pediatric emergency medicine physician inform the book's content?
So different chapters, I think, came from different places. In the ER, a lot of what I do with young children is fix fractures and cuts because they're just so adventurous. And as you know, they like to take risks. They're super confident. And I think these are all traits that I really admire. And when I was looking at the data about how we can translate that to adults, it's actually really useful, especially in our workplace lives, to take those workplace risks and to be more confident people. And so that is a lot of what I took away from my own workplace. And with my little one, I would say some of the best lessons, some of them are obvious, like play and all the benefits we can get from play. Laughter would be another one. I mean, if I look at my entire adult life and I think about all the times I laughed, if I could calculate that, I don't think it's equal to the last few years with my little one because she's always trying to get me to laugh. We love laughing together. I think she's the funniest person I know. She thinks I'm the funniest person she knows. That experience of being a dad to her really inspired a lot of the chapters around laughter and play. I think one of the best things that we can learn from them is the sleep routine. And I implemented this with my little one and I implemented it with myself, and it's been amazing.
Thank you so much. So much information from just that one statement. So they're little heroes in their own world by playing and exploring and being adventurous. And those are the ways that children learn through experimental observation, and they get to expand their executive functioning and learning empathy. Empathy comes through play, learning how to communicate even as an adult. It all starts through that concept of play that you're talking about. So that is very wonderful to hear, Doctor.
And I just just wanted to just touch on something you said. You said they're heroes. I completely agree with that. And one of the other things I think they're very special at, and they build through play as well, is teamwork. And when I looked at all the data on this, they really take joint commitments very seriously. That's probably one of my favorite chapters because I think it's so applicable to work. There's all these great studies about little kids. You put them in a room with an adult they don't know, and they're given a task, and they have to do this task together, and the adult stops working. Just that's part of the experiment. And then we look at what the little kids do. They will address the person pretty politely. They will tell them what needs to be done very directly. If that doesn't work, they'll walk over to them and show them how to do the thing. When things go wrong, they don't blame the other person. They kind of blame the system and move on. They're very, very focused. Unlike adults, we want outcomes and we want things to get done. And we're thinking about that. They are focused on working with that other person and maintaining that relationship. I thought that was a really nice way to think about how we interact with people at work.
Whom do you think will mostly benefit from reading this book?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it can benefit a lot of different people. I do talk about research because I want this to be backed by research, but this book, just so everyone knows, it's for a general audience and it's written for a lay audience. I do write a lot of research papers, but this is my first general audience book. And so I think it can be helpful for anyone who wants to improve their life. At its core, it's a wellness book. I think parents especially will get it because they have seen these special moments. Sometimes it's hard as a parent because you're dealing with so many different things and life is busy and difficult to see those moments. So you can kind of see that too. And I think it's helpful for if you're at home or you're going back to the workplace or you're already back in the workplace. I've divided the book into two different sections. The first 5 chapters are about life in general, which are applicable to everything. And the second half is really a workplace book and how we can take those lessons like teamwork, self-talk, confidence, risk into the workplace.
It's so interesting to see how our inner childhood carries to our adult life. And it helps the parents to learn how to regulate and look at their physiological needs in order to create that safe environment and give that child a sense of belonging and exploration as well. Am I hearing?
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. And I like that you use the term inner child. And, that's what I want adults to get back to as well. And having a little one around you is probably one of the best ways to reactivate that. When you're around that little kid, they'll get you to laugh more. They'll inspire creativity in you. They'll certainly get you to move around more. I mean, I go to the playground, yeah, I don't know, at least 4 or 5 times a week now. They can really inspire those things of our inner child and help us that way. So, yeah, that's a great term.
One of the questions you had that I found very amazing and I really loved about it was about taking psychology and child development and mixing it with science and adult behavior. And that again goes back to that inner childhood that we were just sort of talking about. What connection does research show between toddler psychology and the science of adult behavior?
So I think one of the most important things is about our executive functioning and our prefrontal cortex. And as we get older, this obviously develops more. We're able to do more planning. That, almost is a bit extreme in some ways because we are often left thinking about the future quite a bit in our daily lives and what's going to happen next and worrying about the future. Whereas little kids don't have that. They have a much less developed prefrontal cortex. And so they live in the moment. They're not thinking about their taxes next month or next year or what's going to happen, to the vehicle they ride in. They're thinking about who is this person in front of me? How do I build that relationship? How do I learn more through reading, through asking questions? And so I think that is something obviously we can't change our brain chemistry, but something we can try to just get back into, and being with that child, getting the cell phones away from you and getting screens away from them and just being with them is quite an experience because they live in the moment better than anyone else, and they can really teach us that, something that a lot of us, myself included, have gotten away from, and my daughter has retaught me that.
How can understanding toddlers' behavior improve one's sleep and eating habits as an adult? And I really love that because you're taking childhood sleep and you're interconnecting it to something much further down the road, sleep. And I think we all have sleep issues. I don't think there's one person as an adult that can say, hey, I don't have a sleep issue.
Yeah, if there's one takeaway, hopefully from today for improving your life in general, is fixing your sleep. As soon as you do that, so many things in life automatically improve. And so routines, as you know, for little kids are incredibly important, especially around sleep, meal times, and nap times, but sleep bedtime is the most important one. And we should also take that lesson and make that our also most important routine thing that we do. And so the toddler bedtime routine, most of you probably know it, is 1 hour before bedtime, and we have a set bedtime. We do a bath, a warm bath. After that, little kids, they like to have some type of gentle massage, usually a lotion massage, some type of hygiene activity. And then every little kid, if you ask them, they will tell you what they want before bed, and that's reading. And they will have a favorite book. They know exactly what they want you to read them. Once you finish it, they will negotiate, like my little one does, for more books, more reading, more stories, and then they go to sleep. It really can be that simple. A lot of people spend a lot of money and time on figuring out what the best way for sleep is. But if we do that for little kids and we actually take the exact same thing for us, and we can substitute a little bit, we don't have to take a bath, we can take a shower, but that cools down our body. And then we have some hygiene related activity, can be toothbrushing, whatever, it doesn't have to be lotion massage. And then reading, then that gets us off our screens. It helps us retain that information and it helps us relax before sleep. And so I think the toddler bedtime routine that they do so well is something we need to reinforce and something we need to bring into our own lives.
You're actually helping their body relax by giving them that bath, giving them that massage, creating that routine structure. Even a toddler can choose a book. They have a voice, they have a way of expressing themselves because you give them the sense of belonging. And that's really important. So the 2-year-old chooses the book, brings the book to mommy and daddy, and they have a chance to kind of read that book. And it's really important. Research really goes back to that, depending to the age of the child, the amount of screen hour you want to introduce, because that's the kind of environment that you have created by giving them that bath, that massage, that book. So those are such a wonderful things that you're bringing to our knowledge, doctor. I really appreciate you doing that. And
Yeah,
it's
no problem. And I'll just add on a personal note, my little one loves white noise. And so every night we just play white noise for her, and that makes a huge difference. If people have not tried it yet, I think it's worth a shot. It's a very easy thing to do. You can get a white noise maker or just we use an old cell phone that's not connected to anything except YouTube and just play white noise from YouTube for 12 hours and that works quite well.
Yes, exactly. You have an entire chapter dedicated to reading. Tell us a little bit more about the importance of reading.
As I touched on now with the bedtime routine, but it's true like throughout their day. I mean, these little ones just love reading. And of course, they're not reading in the same way that we understand reading of looking at letters, sounding out words. They're not at that level yet, but their love of books really shines through. I mean, they all have, my daughter has a little library, all little kids do. They have their favorite book. They have stories they want to go through. They start learning the stories. They have a favorite one. And that love of reading, and I have a whole chapter on this because it's so important and something we lose. We know from the data as children get older and then get to adults, we go off this what's called a reading cliff, and we start to read a lot less. And it doesn't come back till we're, in our 60s, 70s in retirement do we start reading again. And so we have this whole gap of reading in our young to mid adult lives. And not to say that it's an easy time to fit in that reading, but if we were able to translate some of the screen time which to reading time, that would have a lot of benefits for us. And so most importantly, for adults, if we're able to do the type of reading and love of reading and books every day or at bedtime, it can be protective against dementia. It's becoming an increasing problem. We all probably know someone with dementia. Sleep, number one, but also that reading can give us that brain exercise that we need to be cognitively at our best and at least have a decreased risk of dementia long term. And then the other thing I'll say is one thing that little kids do really well, and something I've learned from my daughter too, when I write about this, is something called deep reading. Because we're in a society with so much technology and so much information on our cell phones, we're very used to scrolling quickly, what we call skim reading, and we're not really deep into a book as much as we used to be before we had all this technology. And so if we look at a little kid, like when I'm sitting with my daughter, she is reading a book. She will flip back a few pages, go back a few pages, kind of ask questions about things, point at things, have like a lovely interaction. And the book is an extremely slow process. And at the end of it, she, of course, says again, that process of her really focusing on the book and what adults would call deep reading, and there's a lot of good data on this, is really important for us. Again, getting rid of the screens, getting rid of the distractions, trying to get a physical book or an ebook, even just 20 minutes a day. It's hard, but 20 minutes a day of reading, maybe even a few times a week, can be incredibly important. And you don't have to get through a goal like we talk about, like number of chapters or pages. It just has to be an amount of time.
Definitely. If we talk about brain cells, they talk about the prime windows where the language development is really built for children is actually 0 to 6. That's where the neurons are really active. And when you do those reading, those muscles are moving and you're going to have more of those neurons connecting. And it actually helps the child's IQ and it gives the child a higher IQ as well. And I love the fact how you said your daughter takes the book and she goes through the books and she goes back and forth. You're building their attention span. And attention span building comes from early age. Research really indicates that one of the reasons they have ADHD is because they've been introduced to screen very quickly. And when the screens are moving fast, that's what they expect the real life to be. And that's why they're not doing that deep reading. And you're seeing more of that ADHD coming out rather than taking their time and sort of going through the book. And those questions you ask through the book also are a really important part of that reading
It's
research.
right on, and I'm glad you talked about that because, this attention span issue that we have because of screens is so pervasive, especially as we get older. And I personally have had to retrain myself to do like tasks that require work undistracted, like writing a book. And so when I wrote this book and I put in about 2 hours a day for about a year and a lot in the last month. I used a program. I have no connection or affiliation to them called FocusMate. And all FocusMate is, it's a Zoom call basically with someone who wants to get work done. And you link up with them and you tell them what you're going to do. And the other person tells you what they're going to do. And then you guys just get to work, cell phones off. And it just gives you that commitment partner. But that's the level in my own life of being distracted by cell phones and email and notifications that I've had to do to get important long-term projects done. And it's really important for kids. It's really important for adults. And so I'm glad you talked about this attention issue that affects all of us, the more screens, notifications we have in our lives.
We're constantly role modeling for our children. So the way we are at home, what we do is what they do. So if we as adults, 3 hours before bedtime, actually turn off our phone, do not have our phone during the meal time while we're having family time or giving that bath or reading the story, don't have our cell phone while we have the story we're reading to our children. That's not a role modeling. That's, I think, also very important part of parenting. So
Yeah, I love that. And I love how you said mealtime too. That's just such an important time for us to not be distracted and focus on them and help them get through the meal because sometimes they struggle a bit with being distracted as well. So if we're all distracted, then it usually doesn't go well.
exactly. And what we train them now is what they're going to be their adolescence and teen and what they will be in their future. And then you're going to have difficulty. My teen is too much on the screen. So is that because you're being on the screen? And is that what you've been role modeling from early years? And that's what your child is on the screen as well. So it's just all part of that parenting. Another thing that I wanted to ask you, what are some uncommon toddler traits that adults should emulate?
I think one of the things that people don't think about as much, and I have a chapter on this, and I think this has really resonated with people because it's such a new concept for them, is self-talk. If you're lucky enough to be around little kids, you'll see that they talk to themselves. Even when no one's around or they think no one's around, they'll kind of talk themselves through things. And so they use self-talk, and for them, it's called something called private speech. It's part of normal development. But private speech means out loud talking. And so they'll use their name. I have a little story when I'm going to pick up my daughter at preschool. Like little Johnny has his boots on the wrong way and he's looking down and he's saying, "Oh, Johnny did this wrong." And Susie like got on her mittens and she's like, "Hooray!" And she's just cheering herself on. They do this in a very cute way out loud. And then later in life, as we get older, usually after 5, 6, it starts to become whispered, quiet. And then of course in our adult lives, we're not talking to ourselves out loud, but we do have a lot of chatter in our minds. And so I think this is just a wonderful lesson we can learn from them. And it doesn't have to be exactly like them, but here's how I think we can adapt it. So they use self-talk to kind of guide themselves through tasks, and they're also just very encouraging of themselves. And so we can use self-talk as well. It can be silent. It does not have to be out loud. And what the data shows is that we need to talk to ourselves in second or third person. And that can decrease emotional reactivity and stress. So when they put adults in MRI scanners, fMRI, where they're looking at brainwaves and have brainwave function monitors on them, they show them like aversive images, like a scary dog bearing down. And then the person asks, "What am I feeling?" The same person asks, "What is Hasan feeling?" for example. And if you just ask yourself in third person, the emotional reactivity decreases. And so I think this is just one way when we're in stressful situations, we can just change the language of how we talk to ourselves. And then probably most commonly, and what I've gotten feedback from people is the negative self-talk. And you don't really see that as much in little kids as you do in adults. And we're very often down on ourselves and we ruminate on things that happened in the daytime and that can prevent us from sleeping. And so one other tip, again, is not to be thinking about I, but pretend you're talking to yourself like you're talking to your best friend. So still tell them the same things you need to tell them. But just that reframe can sometimes help us just be kinder to ourselves. And I think that's really important.
I really appreciate you talking about that because part of a positive parenting is also using those positive responses to our children. Instead of using the word, I can, you can, I will, I am. Those are positive talks that we can have to ourselves. It's also the emotional messages that we give to our children because it's actually building their self-esteem. And they are always speaking positively or thinking positively about themselves. So what we say to them also as a parent is very important to not give negative messages through the way we speak to them, not comparing them with their other sibling, not comparing them to their cousins. If they did a task, even though it wasn't the best way, you have to understand that's their age level as a 2-year-old, or this is their age level as a 4-year-old. Daddy, look, I cleaned my home, my bedroom. You might be looking at the bedroom and it doesn't look clean, but that's their job. That's how they cleaned it. So saying, yes, you did an amazing job. Let's help we complete this together. That's a positive talk rather than, no, this area is still messy or that area is still messy. Those are negative talks we're giving them. So whatever your child hears, that becomes part of who they will become in personality as well. So the positive talks we give as parents to our children really affects their self-esteem and how they grow.
Yeah, I love that. I'm so glad you mentioned cleaning specifically. It's such a thing that they love to do. And we talked a little bit about teamwork and they just love working with other people. It's just how they're wired. They're just focused on making sure that other person is happy in a very special way. And one way they show that love and care for other people is helping them. And I will say, after going through all of the data, I do not think there's anybody more kind or more helpful than a toddler or preschooler. This is just what defines them. And one of the ways at home that they love helping is with cleaning. My little one, she just loves wiping things. I think she got it from her mom, but she's just always going around wiping things. And sometimes she's just smearing things and she's trying to sweep and things are getting mushed on the ground. But she loves it. She loves being part of the family, helping other people. And so, like you said, we just need to encourage that behavior because they are not very good if we look at it from our perspective at cleaning, but we have to look at it from their age and developmental stage
and they're
and what they're really trying to get at. Like what are they trying to do? They're all they're doing is just trying to be helpful and that's what we want to reinforce and that's what we want to encourage and that's what we want to show them that's important.
wonderful. I guess my next question is what lessons can be learned from toddlers that relate to teamwork and interpersonal relationships?
For interpersonal relationships, one of the things that happens to us as we get older, and anyone who's around a toddler will attest, is they're not question shy. I mean, these little people can ask, in studies, over 100 questions in an hour, and nobody else can ask questions like they do because they don't care what other people think of them like adults do. And we kind of get worried about this when we're older, but their objective is only to get knowledge because they're very curious people. And the other reason they're doing it is to engage other people, to build relationships. And so I think that's a really important takeaway we can get from them. And we as adults should be asking more questions in our work lives, in our personal lives, because it does one of two things. One, it gets us to the answers quicker when we're worried about something, and people don't judge us as negatively as we think they will when we're worried about asking a question. And number two, it's an incredible relationship building tool. Like being around people maybe that you don't even know well, even the small weather related or any types of questions, especially if they're follow-up questions to something the other person says, really starts to build those relationships and something toddlers are really good at and sometimes we get away from when we're older. So I really encourage people to take that toddler lesson of asking more questions.
What is it that you'd like to leave us behind from our presentation today? What is it the takeaway you'd like us to leave behind?
My tagline is toddlers hold the secrets to happiness and success. People don't think of them as leaders, but they are truly leaders. They're wellness champions, and these little people can teach us so much, and that's what I really want to bring to the world. And if any of you are on LinkedIn or X, I'm usually there, and I post several times a week on everything I'm learning. And if you're learning from your little one, then please get in touch. I love sharing other people's stories as well.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hasan. We will be sending your books to 26 families that have joined this event. It's actually being sold at Indigo as well right now. Is there another site?
It is. It's available anywhere books are sold. And importantly for busy parents, it's also an audiobook. So if that's easier for your life, you can also get it and listen to it on your commutes.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hasan. It's been a pleasure to have you today, and we look forward to having you in more events.
Thanks very much. It was nice to be here. Bye.
Thank you for joining this Inventive Minds Child, Youth, and Family Support Center workshop. Do visit www.inventivekidz.com, kids with a Z.com, to learn more about the many other workshops available coming up soon. You can connect with Inventive Minds via email at inventivekidz, again with a Z, at gmail.com for any parenting challenges so their professional team can connect with you. Check out a replay of this and many of our other podcasts by searching Inventive Kidz on YouTube and the Parent Toolbox on Spotify. And join the Parent Toolbox Facebook community group today by searching the Parent Toolbox on Facebook. And we look forward to seeing you all again very, very soon.